Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Cho, anchor of Squawk Box Europe on CNBC. Welcome to this extraordinary keynote. I've been coming to MWC for more than a decade, the prior venue to this one as well. And I've got to say, I've never been on stage and I've never seen 4 CEOs from the major telcos on stage together. That's here at MWC or at any other event in Europe. So it is extraordinary from that context. Well, why have they not been together before? I think possibly too much competition, too much rivalry, but it's exactly that competition that we're going to tackle here today, reinventing Europe's landscape. What needs to change to make sure we have the right infrastructure for the future, particularly as we talk about massive cycles like AI. And I can tell you from the CNBC perspective, we are covering the AI frenzy like no other technology we've covered before, and the impact on markets has been extraordinary. So let's talk about the future of Europe. Just a quick introduction on what's going to happen. Our speakers are going to be giving you a little presentation, about 2 minutes each, and then we'll have a broader discussion. On stage with me today, Tim Höttges, the CEO of Deutsche Telekom, Christel, the CEO of Orange, José María Álvarez Pallete, the chairman and CEO of Telefonica, and Margherita Della Valle, the CEO of Vodafone Group. Well, Tim, let me hand it to you first to kick off the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And it's a big historical moment. First time that the 4 CEOs of Europe are standing on one stage. And we needed a kind of picture, a metaphor for that story. And look, this is the story of what we are trying to bring across today. I asked Della for an AI program to give me a picture about Europe was once a star in the telco sector. And it lost its momentum over the time. And now it's trying to fight back and trying to regain momentum again. And this is, by the way, what Della gave us. Is it Icarus, who is at the end of the day dying? Or is it Phoenix, which is needed, to succeed here in Europe? And this is not less than a declaration of the 4 CEOs of the European telco space that something has to change in this continent. Now, we are standing for Europe. We are serving Europe. There's no question about that one. We are operating in 19 countries. We are serving 370 million customers. We have 20 billion investments on an annual basis, more than 300,000 people deployed and working for the customers here. And we provide, more than 72 million high-speed broadband connections over the European continent. We are serving Europe. But we have a problem, and we have a severe problem if you look to the world. Remember last year we had the discussion about, is this a Mondrian or is this the world of telecommunication and media? And what you say, the world has even get more difficult. We are dwarfed here in Europe compared to the hyperscalers, compared to the internet ecosystem from the US, which is eating up, let's say, the cake which we are, providing to our customers here in Europe. And let's say the consequence is that we are underperforming in the tech sector and in the media sector over quite a period. Until 2016, the world was still okay. We were just on par level with the others. But since then, something has happened in our industry. Tech sector plus 860%, media plus 400%, and our space just, around 100% increase. We are lagging behind. And on top of that, you see what's happening at the same time. The data traffic on our networks is exploding. It's not stopping. 4G now being more saturated, other technologies, but 5G, growing by 30 to 50% on each of the countries where we are operating. So what are we doing? How do we get out of that mess? What can we do as an industry to perform? And look, we have to collaborate. We have to do the best in our business, but we need as well help, and that is what we are talking about today. Look, this is the problem of European citizens. This is the problem of the next generation. This is the problem of this continent. The US is investing $240 into their citizens, into digital infrastructure on an annual basis already for quite some time. In Europe, we are only able to invest 109 euros into the infrastructure. So this is half What is the consequence if we are not catching up with our infrastructure to the infrastructure of, let's say, other ecosystems, being it in Asia or being it in Europe? We will fall behind. Now, what can we do about it? We can increase the prices to get more revenues. But you know what's happening is here, you see on this slide. We are not able to get the same revenues because we have a very competitive landscape. Very difficult to fight the ecosystem. We can as well trying to get more money, squeezing our capex, squeezing our asset base to get more profitability out of the asset. What you can see, more than 60% of all European telcos are not earning their capital costs anymore. So can you tell me how companies can invest into future infrastructure if they're not earning the money back? Who the hell is giving these companies money for the future investments which are so desperately needed at that continent? We can as well consolidate and do the same what happened in China, 3 operators or 4, or in the US where you have 8 operators, 3 big telcos, or in the European Union, 45 operators. So you can consolidate and create economies of scale. The problem is we are not able to increase prices. The problem is our capital cost is very difficult to earn back, and on top of that, we have no way of consolidation. So can you give us the recipe on how we are safeguarding the future of that continent? And I'd like to give it to my friend José María, who will now let you know how we're going to do that.
That was quite a start. I mean, I'm going to try to follow. Listen, we are the last hope. We are the last hope of Europe in terms of technology. We need to do our job, and we are good at doing our job. Europe used to be a hometown of innovation. Here, the GSM standard was born, and the UMTS standard was born. And there is a huge investment gap that you see here. We need to fill a gap of 200 billion euros. And we can do that, but we need to be able to do that. We need a solution for our problems. So we know how to do that. We are good at innovating. We are good at doing things. But we need to face this situation. Something is wrong, and we need to fix it. And how to fix it? Well, the first thing is that we are building something different. We are not building just any longer a telecommunication network. We are building a massively decentralized supercomputer. When you deploy fiber and 5G and you do an abstraction layer based on software, the orchestration layer becomes something radically different. And when you do this kind of thing, this is a brand new world, and therefore we are going to be able to compete. But we need to be able to build those networks, and therefore something needs to change. We need a new regulatory regime. And you know what? When we work together, we do pretty cool stuff. We have been able to do things like Open Gateway, which is a revolution going forward. It's once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the telco sector to be a complement of the cloud. We do Open RAN, we softwareize the radio access, and when you softwareize the radio access, it's a full new network, it's software-based network, and therefore you can go to cloud, you can do many more things, they'll become software-based network. We can revolutionize the digital marketing landscape, as we have done together with UTIC, and remember and keep in mind, edge cloud is the future, edge computing is the future, network slicing is the future, and those are going to be software-based, and we can do that. That implies new challenges that Christel is going to be able to cover.
Thank you, José María. So, as we've explained, our networks are going through massive transformation: software, virtualization, cloud, AI. And we are all also very committed to being responsible companies, driving efficiency and embracing the green transition that Europe is leading. Despite massive traffic growth, because we continue to have exponential traffic growth on our network, despite the fact that we have to maintain resilient networks in a context where, of course, climate change is putting pressure with a lot more natural disasters coming. And of course, we have to do that in an environment where we have to educate customers and embrace circular economy. Less than 10% today of mobile phones are refurbished mobile phones. So we embrace efficiency. We modernize our networks by decommissioning copper, moving to fiber. That drives massive energy efficiency. We obviously embrace green energy, adopting renewable energy. We also drive efficiency a lot of the features on our network, making sure that network can be off when there's no traffic on the network. We also work on making sure that the products and services we design are eco-designed. And we work hard on educating our customers, especially circular economy with smartphones, but also working on eco-rating labels so that the entire industry and consumers start to embrace sustainability in their behaviors. But beyond our own frontiers, we are all very committed as companies to being net neutral by 2040, and this is the case of most of the operators. On top of that, obviously, we drive this green transition beyond our boundaries. We work hard with our suppliers, because obviously we can't achieve our objectives unless the entire ecosystem of suppliers drive this. And we also embark our customers, as I was mentioning. Last but not least, we all know that digital technologies can enable a lot more efficiency for other industries, and studies show that up to 20% of carbon emissions can be saved through the adoption of digital technologies. I'll now hand over to Margherita to talk about, so how do we make it happen in Europe?
I'll keep the conclusion very simple. Just one slide. You have heard from José María and Christel that we are driving change together, but it's not enough. Our customers and millions of European businesses depend on us. Our customers need more from us. Their world is changing very, very fast. We are now in the industrial internet era. They need more from us. They need more connectivity. They need more innovation. And we are ready to play our part, but if we need to do more, we also need a new deal. And it's essentially 5 changes that you see behind me that can make all the difference. I'll just pick a couple of examples to leave with you. First of all, local in-market consolidation needs to become possible in Europe. This building today is covered by 4 5G networks. This is true also in the rural areas. In a 5G world, it's just not economic. It makes no sense to have 4 parallel 5G networks everywhere. Another example, spectrum. Imagine you were building a house and someone was coming to you from time to time, knocking on the door and telling you, you know what, this land you have built the house on, which is our spectrum, you need to bid for it. Again, you don't know what the price will be, you don't know if we will win the bidding. How would you feel if this was your house about upgrading a house in those circumstances? We need spectrum certainty. And then finally, fairness. Here today, with us, you have 4 telecom operators that are dealing with over 100 different regulators. If instead of us today on this stage, you had 4 hyperscalers, the situation would be quite different. Different rules. They run also big networks. They have submarine cables. They have cloud connectivity, backbones, but different rules. The logic should be really simple in this digital era. Same service, same rules, irrespective of who is the provider. I'm talking about fairness, spectrum, consolidation. All this is needed if Europe needs to change. It's needed for our customers. It's needed because they need us to give them world-leading connectivity. They need us to give them innovation. They need a wider choice of services from us. So it's really important that we are able to lead again for the customers we serve to be able to be the industrial giants that secure the future of Europe, the innovative digital SMEs that drive productivity. We are here tonight together as a choice because we are ready to change and play our part. Earlier this morning, Commissioner Breton was on the same stage, signaling that understanding is building now in Europe. We need to work together for this new phase. Thank you.
Let me dive straight in and bring up the point around consolidation. The European Commission, in its white paper recently, suggested it was more inclined to consider the scale of players. Now, possibly 2.5 of you have an immediate vested interest in regulators doing an about-face on consolidation. Tim, you're the 0.5, by the way. You've got a substantial stake in BT Group. Christel, Orange, MásMóvil have signed a merger deal to consolidate the Spanish marketplace. And Margherita, the UK regulator, poring over your attempt at a JV with Rival 3 in the UK. Tim, first up, why is this not a well-timed campaign to allow consolidation for self-interest, delivering greater profits with less choice and potentially higher prices for customers?
Look, we have the example of the US. Deutsche Telekom stands on two legs, which is the US and which is Europe. And by the way, we were consolidating the number 3 and the number 4. And there were people who said, by the way, this is now killing the competition. We will see increased prices. We will see less of competition because only 3 operators are acting in the mobile space. And we will see less investments, but higher profitability and higher dividends. Now, look back 4 or 5 years down the road. US has the best 5G network because that was one part of the remedies which we accepted. The US has, now 3 players which are playing on eye level, and Deutsche Telekom is gaining market share. We are already bigger than AT&T, and we are striving for #1 position. And the prices not went up, the prices went down. So now we are in the position to compete on eye level with AT&T and Verizon. So you see the US is the best kind of case to take as an example for Europe. In Europe, impossible. The moment where we are trying to consolidate from 4 to 3 in one of the markets, I can tell you the regulator, the cartel office will immediately impose another 4th operator, put remedies on somebody that somebody else has the position to build the 4th player again. We do this mistake after and after and after again. And therefore, Deutsche Telekom has decided if the market structures aren't working, we exit the market. We are not playing in this market anymore because you cannot ride on a dead horse. It's impossible. If the market structure doesn't work, it will not have. And this is not good for the infrastructure.
Margherita, let me turn to you because we're talking about a JV in the UK, not even full-blown consolidation. The unions are saying that you could see bills rise by as much as £300 per year if this JV goes ahead. I mean, the optics are difficult anyway, given inflation has come into the telecom sector. So how do you get this past regulators and how do you get it past customers to ensure that there's more investments for the future?
I think regulators will have to judge on the facts. And by the way, given where prices are in the UK, I think some of the figures which tend to be quoted are really fanciful. But parking that, the most important point here is really facts. And the UK is sliding behind, like other European countries, in connectivity. With the merger, we have committed that with a single network being combined with the 2 entities, we will deliver an 11 billion investment plan for the UK, which is going to drive 5G to all the areas that need it so badly. So it will have a very positive impact on the UK economy, and we have also said it very clearly, we are not going to change our pricing policies as a consequence.
Christel, Orange has tried much over the years to find different sources of revenue. Now you're attempting to consolidate the Spanish market and becoming the major player there. How much more scale do you need?
Well, first of all, we're not saying that we want to remove competition from markets, because the 3 of us will continue to compete hand in hand in Spain, but we were lacking scale. And when you're the number 2 in a market, which is our case today still, we are merging with the number 4, MásMóvil. We're going to have more scale and ability to invest in the networks. And I think the debate today is exactly this one. How much should we allow companies like us to generate profit so that we can invest in our networks. And of course, if you look at the past, you can't predict the future from the past, but the reality of Orange today in Spain, we're lagging behind Telefonica in terms of 5G rollout. And if we are not merging with MásMóvil, because we're going to merge with MásMóvil, we're going to be able to continue to invest in fiber, to continue to invest in 5G, to continue to invest for customers in Spain, and to compete based on scalable infrastructure in the market.
José, let me get you in quickly, because as we talk about consolidation, there's still a big nationalism angle here. Who is allowed to consolidate? In your market, the Saudis showed interest in investing in your company, prompting a blocking stake from the Spanish government. If consolidation is allowed, isn't there a big dangling question as to who is allowed to consolidate and whether they should be Western companies only?
Well, my point here is that it's, depending on the origin, is the scale of the existing players at the end of the day. I mean, I might not like the idea of having a stronger competitor in Spain, but then I will be forced to compete even better. So for me, it's not the origin of the investor. For me, it's about who is competing with me. You know, and for me, this situation triggers another consequence, which is, you know, I was regulated in Spain because years ago I was a former copper incumbent monopoly. I'm no longer copper, I'm just full fiber, I'm no longer the incumbent, and I'm certainly not a monopoly. So I'm asking for a total deregulation. So I think that this situation triggers the fact that regulation has become obsolete. The way the current framework of regulation is coming from a previous century. We need a next century regulation. If we want to build these supercomputers, this regulation is just fitting for that. Because it's very narrow-minded. It's just looking to one part of the thing, but we are losing innovation. I mean, we are sacrificing the vision of an industrial policy going forward, what we want to compete, what is the kind of networks that we want to have 10 years down the road, with very narrow-minded. And in my opinion, even the definition of relevant market is wrong because technology is going faster than regulations. Right. So I'm questioning the whole ecosystem, not just a part of it.
Margherita, you want to come in?
I wanted to build on this concept of competition because I think there is a little bit of a confusion here. Competition in retail and competition in infrastructure. The problem we are facing is this problem of multiplying parallel infrastructure. In a 5G world, it's absolutely impossible to have economic returns on so many networks built in parallel. I think if we were talking about roads or energy, people would understand that. It doesn't mean that there cannot be 20 brands, 50 brands competing on retail towards the customer. The question is how many infrastructure in a 5G world can exist at the same time.
Let's compare it to airlines then, because many countries are attached to a flagship airline. If the infrastructure is so important, doesn't it mean that there's a safety and security element where you do need diversity of supply? Christel?
Well, I think I won't compare to airlines, but what we've been discussing the whole day, open gateway. I mean, the competition is not between telcos. The question is, who's going to help innovate for customers? And who's going to be able to assure, indeed, a safe digital world, a resilient digital world? And telecom operators have this history of serving customers, being reliable and responsible. And of course, in a world where we today compete with big tech giants who have less regulation than we do, we need to make sure that we can collaborate all together to innovate, and that's open gateway, developing APIs that are obviously standards in the industry, but in a much faster manner than we've done historically because of going in every country and negotiating in every country.
Tim, let me pivot to 5G and where we're at. What are the challenges still with 5G in Europe?
Look, I think the biggest issue, which starts with the spectrum policy. In the US, spectrum gets sold. You would use it and then you optimize it. If you don't find customers on your network, you can sell part of the spectrum, but you own it for your life. You can rent it out. You have an ownership about the real estate we're living in. In Europe, every 20 years, we run into big auctions. Germany, since 2000, has taken 65 billion euros out of our ecosystem, Vodafone, Telefonica and Deutsche Telekom, to get it as a tax for the government. This money is not flowing back. Think about how many sites, how many coverage, how many customer service we would have been able to create out of this 65 billion, only if we would have get a fraction. But they create kind of artificial shortages in this market, to gain a tax out of it. In the US, it's totally different. There's a market for that one, and there is a transparency about it. This is one of the things. We need a renovation of the spectrum. Spain, for instance, decided wisely now to extend the spectrum use with build-out obligations. This is in the interest of citizens here in Europe, and this is a model which we should apply. Why don't we have a spectrum policy for Europe? We are living in a thing we call Europe a market. To be honest, guys, Europe is not a digital single market. We have 27 different regulations here. If I'm crossing the border to France, I have a drop call. You know why? Because of legal interception, the French government is not allowing that our networks are connected. Yeah. So, guys, we should now finally wake up and say, ecosystem in China, 1.5 billion people, ecosystem in India, 1.4, ecosystem in the US, 330 million, and Europe should be a market of 500 and not a fraction of 50 here, 30 there, and 80 there.
Christel, weigh in on this. Is spectrum the main problem when it comes to 5G and the remaining challenge in Europe?
I think it's the whole topics that Margherita highlighted. It's spectrum, it's regulation, and I think we've all pointed at, and it's not one regulation in Europe, it's 27 different regulations, and it's 27 regulation plus the European regulation. And it's also making sure that we collaborate and innovate. And again, I mean, open gateway is a good example, but speed is the essence. And today, we have not, I mean, if we think about the regulation, and even we welcome the proposal from the Commission and what Thierry Breton presented this morning, this is going in the right direction. But are we going to move fast enough when we see the speed at which AI is going, the speed at which innovation gets, look around here in Mobile World Congress. So I think speed is really something that the sense of urgency, at least, is something that we continue to work on.
José, are you failing to maximize the 5G revenues that are meant to be coming with this new technology? Why not tap into those revenues and use that for reinvestment?
Because at the end of the day, monetizing 5G on the B2C thing, it's hard thing because of the competition scheme. We are not afraid of that. My point here is that 5G is an amazing technology, and 5G standalone is going to softwareize the radio access. And that's a game changer, because when you mix fiber plus 5G standalone, then this supercomputer becomes a reality. And we need to change the abstraction layer, we need to build a kernel, and that's something radically different. So for me, it's not just 5G, it's 5G standalone and the possibility of softwareizing the network end-to-end, from the core to the radio access, from the fiber to the home of the customer. And that's a different thing, because then you can run software out of it. Everything that used to be hardware becomes suddenly software-enabled. And that's a game changer, and then is when Open Gateway is going to come in. So for me, it's not just 5G, it's 5G standalone as an enabler of things. By the way, I was listening to us, and I don't want to leave the audience with the impression this is not a therapy. This is not just for operators, bad mouth in Europe. This is something different. This is a desperate rallying cry. Let us compete. Let us do our job, and let us do our job in a moment in time when the network is changing. This is a historical moment for telecommunication. We are building something different. And therefore, the message here is let us compete. Let us do our job. Let us build this amazing thing that we are building in a brand new ecosystem. What's the vision that Europe has for the networks 10 years down the road?
We're almost out of time, so a quick 20-second takeaway message from you. Margherita first. What would you say as Europe needs a new deal? What's the biggest priority, and how quickly does change need to happen?
Quickly, it was yesterday, really, and I think we need to seize the time now. The biggest priority for me is to help European businesses to digitize.
José, what is the biggest priority now, and how quickly does change need to happen?
For me, it's revolution time. I mean, we need to do something radically different right now. And it's same service, same rules, same obligation. Let's have an image of what Europe wants to do 10 years down the road.
Christel, the #1 priority, and how quickly?
Well, I think we talk about speed, but it's also, we've been here for a long time, and I think Telefonica's birthday, 100 years. So we know how to manage long-term and short-term, but again, changing now, because every day that passes, Europe is losing competitivity.
And Tim, quickly to you, the number one priority and the speed of change.
I think it's time that the political leaders in Brussels, not anymore talking, but taking actions. Because we are losing the trust of the capital market who gives us the money to build the infrastructure. And now it's time that all this kind of statements, which we have heard over the last years, are now becoming real in legislation, becoming real in the execution, that we rebuild trust with our investors who provide us with the money to compete, to build the infrastructure, and to build the wealth of the next generation.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we will conduct interviews and they'll be on CNBC's Squawk Box tomorrow, so be sure to tune in. Thank you very much to Tim, Christel, José and Margherita.
Thank you. Thank you.